Hey everybody, it's Mr. Bud, and today I want to talk with you all about the principle of principles. So we all have heard about principles, right? And everybody's told us from Jim Rohn to Brian Tracy, everybody, you have to live a principled life. I'm going to attempt to take it a little bit deeper today so that you understand that it's actually not an option. That if you want to create success in your life and business, that success, the foundation of that success, fundamentally, it is principles. That it's not an option. You can't separate the two. And I want to try to really get this concept in by reversing time and going back to maybe the start of life, right? Really the foundational principle of life. And I started thinking about how to explain this. And if you look at what life is, first of all, we don't know, the probability that the random sequence of amino acids ever would have lined up, if they were just floating around in the ocean is so astronomically large that it's weird, right? Did life really just start because these amino acids randomly lined up in the ocean and formed the first, sort of sequence of DNA that led to life? Probably not. But let's just look at that anyway, okay? There's an infinite amount of sequences, and most of them lead to almost nothing. And then there's this one sort of genetic sequence where all these amino acids need to line up perfectly. And when all these amino acids line up perfectly, it leads to life, okay? So there's a principle there. The foundational principle of life is that all of these amino acids need to line up perfectly. And if they do line up exactly like that, then you get life. That's what I call truth, okay? Truth isn't some moral thing. It's not like some morality. It's not some sort of rigid belief system. It's just truth. It's just what is. Everything needed to line up perfectly. All of those amino acids needed to line up perfectly so that life could form, okay? So if you think about that, you can actually apply it to everything. In order for this house to be built, the walls needed to be built in a very specific way, right? There's certain codes, there's rules, and you can't just go off and start doing whatever the hell you want and expect that your house is going to last through a hurricane. It'll break down. When you build a skyscraper, there's rules, there's principles. It has to be X amount of feet deep into the ground. It needs to be a certain amount of depth in order to withstand a certain amount of height. There's all of these principles that if you mess with those principles, it doesn't work. Nothing works. There is no life if the sequence isn't lined up in a certain way. There is no house if it's not built to code properly. There is no skyscraper if the foundation is not deep enough. These are principles. They're fundamental principles. They're truths that you cannot get away from. They're unavoidable. They are just the truth of how things work. And so I want each and every one of us right now to get that there is a truth to how things work. That truth is not moral. It's not, is it right or is it wrong? It's just what it is. It's not morality, it's just what it is. It's just the truth of how things work. And now I want each of us to understand and get that there is a truth to how business works. There is a truth to how success works. There are success principles. There's unavoidable things that you can't get away from, that if you don't do them, then you don't get the success. The same way that life doesn't form if the sequence isn't right, and the skyscraper falls over if the foundation isn't right, and the house blows over if the walls weren't right. There's just the same principles apply to anything that we do in life. Now in this video, I'm not going to start going into a bunch of success principles. We will leave that to later. But what I really want you to do right now, the call to action in this video, is to actually look at your life and look at every way that you might not be living an unprincipled life. Like when you get up in the morning, what do? Is the foundation of your morning based on a principle that leads to having a productive day? You know, we know these things. This isn't rocket science. There's actually been tons of studies done on this stuff already. If you get up in the morning and the first thing you look at is your phone, and you immediately get into email, and you get into the news, and you get into all this stuff, and you don't have any kind of morning ritual in your life, then what we know is that your day is less powerful, that your day lacks a fundamental level of happiness, a feeling of joy and productivity. We know, just like they've always said, breakfast is so important. So is a morning ritual. Doing something in the morning that empowers us, a ritual that fills us up with energy and vitality and life, is fundamental to affecting the positivity of the rest of your day, the productivity of the rest of your day. That's one kind of morning principle, right? It's or life principle. But there's tons of them. There's principles everywhere. And the more that we actually begin to live our life based off these principles, based off these fundamental truths of just how the world works, of how success works, we start to create really successful lives. So I want to inspire and I want to encourage each of us to begin to look at our life and say, where can I start living more principles? How can I start living with more principles? How can I live a principled life? And the more that we're living a principled life, the more successful that we will become. So I hope you've enjoyed the principle of principles, and I look forward to bringing more principles, more content, more training, more observations of how things work, and conversations and discussions about how success works in future videos. We'll see you guys soon.